all went away. But they're not going to tell you that because they're going to make up a story, and then the Lincoln was at a play, and then some guy got him, and it was just because, Lincoln was doing his thing. No, he was going against having a central bank which controlled the system. Because in this book, they were basically explaining that if you have a central bank in your country is controlled. There's only 2 countries left without a central bank. That is Iran and North Korea. You think about 2001 and that whole thing that happened with the holograms and whatever. They invaded all the countries afterwards, and guess what they did? They put a central bank in there. They went into Iraq, they went into Afghanistan, they went into Libya, they went into all these different countries, and guess what they did? Put a central bank in there. Because those countries at that time had interest-free loans. Imagine that. Imagine taking out a loan and not having a percentage point. No interest. No interest. And the only 2 left are Iran and North Korea. And then you start to sit there and think, see this whole conflict stuff going on? Oh, we're going to be battling and blah, blah, blah. Yeah, you're battling because you're trying to invade somebody's country to put your bank inside their country. That's what's going on. You're not battling because of actually battling. And that's what's funny, because all the battling is nonsense. You got lasers and all kinds of things that people can do and whatever else. It's all just sitting there playing a game. It's an act, is what it is. And even back with, if you guys remember what happened in Hawaii, when Hawaii got attacked with the DEWs, that whole thing, that's the actual warfare that exists. Not the little, pew, 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 all that stuff and whatever else they're trying to show. So when you get into this is a powerful book. I'll just put it there. And you can just look that one up. And you can order it. You can just go online, and look that up. Someone said Russia doesn't have a Federal Reserve. They got it. Russia has been compromised since the Bolshevik Revolution in the 1910. They've been compromised for a long time. I mean, they were part of the players in World War II to do what was done after the war. The parts that aren't talked about. The Eisenhower death camps and all the stuff that happened after World War II to the people. So Russia has been deep in the pockets. Now, they might show on the television that it's different over there, but they're interconnected. It's all part of communism. That's what it is. It's all part of communism, Marxism, whatever word you want to call it. It's all in the club. They might say, he's doing some things. No. It's the same stuff. Because they were involved. They were heavily involved. And when you get into this, the Rothschilds are the ones who created the Bolshevik Revolution. So then you start to think about all these revolutions in countries, they're funded by bankers. They pay the people to cause a revolution. Russia had the largest gold reserves in the world during 1910. Think about all that money. And then you think about the queen, or whatever her name is, now she's gone, now it's the king. They got the largest gold reserves in the world. Where'd they get them? By causing revolutions, paying revolutions to happen, and then taking their gold. Germany also had a lot of gold too. That gold was gone, taken. It was moved to New York City. And then just so happened, remember the whole 2001 thing? All the money vanished. Happy Moon Day. Today we're going live talking about the Federal Reserve. Very interesting topic. We don't know much about the Federal Reserve, they tell us, even though it's a central bank, even though it controls almost everything in the country. But today we're going to talk about the Federal Reserve and some stuff we're not taught about the Federal Reserve. This is a deep rabbit hole, and I highly recommend looking into the Federal Reserve. And today we're going to talk about a book about the Federal Reserve as well, too. Someone said, hello, sunshine. Welcome. Had a lot of sun out in Sedona. Had a lot of sun yesterday. Got to see my mom and my sister, and definitely got to sit in the sun and got cooked. But it was a great one. Great one. It's been perfect weather here in Scottsdale. Absolutely beautiful. I think it was about 91, not too hot. Now it's going to get it up to about 100s in Scottsdale, so it's going to get toasty. But welcome. Mr. Rogers, LOL. Yes, we're always doing some teaching Always doing some teaching here today on Cultivate Elevate, and today we're going to be talking about the secrets of the Federal Reserve. This is a great one, and I'm going to butcher his name, but it's Eustace Mullins, or just E. Mullins. You can look into this book, and this is a very powerful book that I think everybody should look into, because this is a very eye-opening book. When you get into everything about the Federal Reserve, this is one topic that they don't talk about. They don't even teach us it in school. And the reason they don't teach us about the Federal Reserve in school is because the schools are owned by the Rockefellers. And the Rockefellers are in the connection with the Rothschilds and the Warburgs with the Federal Reserve. So when you get into learning about this topic, there's not much taught about it because the Rockefellers took over the General Education Board in 1902. That's when they created it. So of course they're not going to teach you about taxation and how taxation is theft. And that's the whole point of the Federal Reserve. Think about every time you go to buy something. Let's say you go to buy a house, a car, whatever it is, property, there's a percentage. There's a tax that's on there. Maybe it's 4%, maybe it's 6%, maybe it's 8%. That's paying back the Federal Reserve. The Federal Reserve was orchestrated in 1913 on Jekyll Island. They actually sold out the whole country. They passed bills overnight to get the Federal Reserve. And it was actually Woodrow Wilson who created the Federal Reserve and got that whole thing pushed under the rug. And when you look into this, you see it all connects back to the Rothschilds. The Rothschilds run the banks. They orchestrate wars. They're the bankers who control everything. And it all goes into here. And this is interesting because when you think about people who went against a central banking system, you start to see people like Lincoln, people like Jackson, people like JFK, people like Gaddafi, and then you get into Germany, and Hitler went against Federal Reserve. And when you start to think about what happened to all the people who went against the central banks, you start to sit there and go, You start to see it. You start to see that they either disappeared or they were assassinated. And it's interesting because this book talks about the Federal Reserve has a certain window that they don't have to elect chairmen or chairpeople for up to 14 years. So they can put policies in place to tank the economy or boost the economy, whatever they want to do. And they can create things like the Depression. That's 1929. That's bankers. And this book goes into talking about how the 1929 Great Depression orchestrated by bankers. Every single war orchestrated by bankers. Bankers tanking economies, putting taxes on people, and screwing the people. That's pretty much what it comes down to. You look at all the wars, and every time a country was put into war, then what would happen is they would have to pay taxes back after that, and they'd take out loans and all this money, and that created the whole credit system. And this book goes deep into that, about how credit is the way to have that revolving economy. And then as each war would happen, they'd put out more credit, and they'd start taxing people even more. And then these countries have to pay back this debt. And then you think about America. How much debt are we in? 34 trillion or whatever it is. That's owed to these people. Rothschilds, J.P. Morgan, and then you get into the Rockefellers, and then you get into the Warburgs, and then you get into the Loebs. I think it's like Loebs or whatever it is, and Lazards, and all these people, all based out of London. London is the stronghold of all the money. So when you pay your property tax and your income tax, you're paying London. That's who's getting the money. So America left the colony to get screwed by the same colony and start paying back the money to the same colony that they originally left for. And you start to look at Thomas Jefferson and all of his talks. Thomas Jefferson's talks were about getting rid of central banks and taxes and that whole thing. And here we are, paying a central bank and paying taxes. All the stuff is going right back to London. Rothschilds. And here's what's crazy. This was a mind-blowing part of this book too. The price of gold is determined by the Rothschilds. So you know how when you see like the price of gold is at like 2,200 or whatever it is, they manipulate the price. They pick the price. And it's interesting because gold was removed as a currency in about 1934. You had a U.S. president remove that as a legal tender from the people so that they couldn't use gold anymore. Why? Because gold held value. And then when you have the Rothschilds come in there and manipulate the price, now you can put the price at whatever you want. And even if there is a depression, like we're facing right now, we'll say, you can still just manipulate the price and never raise the price of gold so that people don't have money in their pocket. And this book goes into Woodrow Wilson, who's a scumbag. Then it goes also into Teddy Roosevelt and his whole thing, who's also a twisted person. Then you go into FDR and all the other people who were involved in World War I, World War II, all scummy people. They sold out the country. And then this goes into talking about how when people are going to vote, the whole thing with your voting, it's the same side. They're both backed by the Federal Reserve. The Federal Reserve is paying both sides to implement the policies. So people start to think, oh, well, I'm going for that side. That side's also in bed with the other side. Both sides are on the same side to screw the people. And during 1913, there was a Republican running for the Aldrich plan, which was the Federal Reserve plan, and then there was Woodrow Wilson. And both of them were enacting the same thing. So when it goes into the whole thing of one's going to do this and one's going to do the other, they're both doing the same thing. It all ties back into central banks. And what's crazy is when I was getting into this whole thing and reading about the Great Depression and that whole thing, you start to see that it was orchestrated by bankers. Whole bunch of bankers trying to make money off people. And I was going into World War II heavily. I just watched the documentary Europa, The Last Battle. I highly recommend everybody watch that documentary. And that documentary talked about how in World War II, the president at the time knew that the Japanese were coming in because they were listening in on the messages because they put an oil embargo on Japan to cause Japan to attack. And it was interesting because in World War II, or just before it, Americans were very against war. They were so against it. They were like, they're German, I'm not going to attack Germans. Why would I attack my own people? But then they orchestrated an event called Pearl Harbor, and guess what? Americans went into war because they actually thought that they were being attacked. But it was the sellouts, the people who were in power at that time, who were scumbags, once again, who orchestrated events to make a country attack another country because Japan was going to run out of oil. And someone just said, my uncle was killed in Pearl Harbor. I'm sorry to hear that. It's horrible. Like, that's what I'm saying. So people's lives were taken for an event to cause a war of something that didn't even need to happen. But bankers, because they needed to make money with the Federal Reserve and put people in permanent debt so they can keep getting a percentage back, they get the kickback. And it's just crazy. And this whole book just goes into it. And it's such a great one. And this guy actually has so many more books. He actually has a book about all the, the injections they try to put into the people. He has a book all about the gulags and the whole thing with the gulag camps. And he has a whole bunch of different books. Absolutely phenomenal. But, when you get into all of this, it all leads back to these central banks. And as they created this central bank known as the Federal Reserve, they started taxing people and they started screwing the people. I mean, think about this. Before World War II, income tax went to 80%. Income tax, 80%. First off, all taxes are fake. Nobody should be paying any taxes at all. But 80%. Think about that. 80% of your money is going to a war which was created by the people who are bankers. Think about that. So then you think about World War I, and this is another interesting one because we're going to go a little farther with this, if you guys can see this. So on the bottom of this is an article that I found, or a newspaper article from 1904, and this is great. This talks about how in order to have helium, you need radium. And it's interesting because before World War I, the Germans were experimenting heavily with radium and helium. Remember the blimps? Everybody flying around in the blimps in the 1900s? You need radium to create helium. So when you go back in time and you start to think about World War I, and my buddy, the archivist, this is what he was talking about. World War I was created at first by the bankers and also because of everything going on with radium. Radium and helium. You got unlimited energy and you could fly around for free. So when you start to think about that, you have Federal Reserve money and all this stuff they come in and try to orchestrate with the wars, and then you got everything going on with that. Then we take it a step further with radium. We got another one, and we always talk about how the sun heals. Check that. That's using radium to emit UV rays to heal people. Remember how they tell you the sun is dangerous? Well, back in about 1901, people knew the sun was healthy. And the sun heals. And they were trying to figure out why people were having illness, so they would expose them to UV rays. And that's right there. You can see that. They even got the little tanning glasses on, which is funny. Remember all the tanning beds that they also banned? Because they were saying, oh, you better stay away from those? It was the lotions. They didn't want to tell you. But solar healing back in 1901. And then we go into one more. Let me see if I got this other one. This one's not on a thing. This is into sound frequency, so you guys can see. Don't want to tell people about that one. Those are tambourines. And look at that. Those are bells. And going into all the stuff that used to be the church, the pipe organs that used to be in the churches. Remember those? Healing. Free healing. There's no money in that. And then that connects back to us in the Federal Reserve. Because when the Rockefellers had the Flexner Report, they got rid of all the natural healing remedies. They got rid of all the people who practice natural healing remedies because that competes with their system. Their system needs to keep making money on people over and over and over again. Just like the Federal Reserve has to keep taxing the people and putting people into debt. And then you're starting to wonder, when do we repay the debt if the percentages just keep going up? And back in about the 1970s, mortgages went up to about 16 or 17%. Imagine that. 17% on a mortgage. And this is what's crazy. When you get into the Federal Reserve, you see that they can just manipulate the prices to anything that they want. And they can cause even deflation, where they just mess with the currency, and that's what caused that whole depression of 1929. They just made it go the opposite way. Because if you can rise it, you can sink it too. But The Secrets of a Federal Reserve is a great book, and you guys can just get that one right there. You can take a screenshot. But this is probably one of the best books that I have read. It's up there with The Contagion Myth. It's up there with The Invisible Rainbow. It's just an eye-opener. And as I went through this, I thought, this is why it's not taught. This is why our education system doesn't teach any of this. You know, when you tie it back into all the interest rates and the percentages, and this is what people fought up against. They didn't want to pay taxes. You go before about like 1904, I think the income tax was like 1%. And all the people who went against it, you had Lincoln. Lincoln actually had his own currency that he was promoting, which was interest-free. Then you had Andrew Jackson, who also had an interest-free currency. Then you have Libya. Remember Libya and Gaddafi? Interest-free currency. Then we go into Germany, World War II. Guess what? Interest-free currency. Interest-free loans. And somebody just said the greenback. Yes, that's what it was, by Lincoln. So, and then you go into, even with JFK, remember when they got him? He was going to end the Fed. So when you get into this, all the people who went against this whole Federal Reserve system all went away. But they're not going to tell you that because they're going to make up a story, and then the Lincoln was at a play, and then some guy got him, and it was just because, you know, Lincoln was doing his thing. No, he was going against having a central bank which controlled the system. Because in this book, they were basically explaining that if you have a central bank in your country is controlled. There's only 2 countries left without a central bank. That is Iran and North Korea. You think about 2001 and that whole thing that happened with the holograms and whatever, they invaded all the countries afterwards, and guess what they did? They put a central bank in there. They went into Iraq, they went into Afghanistan, they went into Libya, they went into all these different countries, and guess what they did? Put a central bank in there. Because those countries at that time had interest-free loans. Imagine that. Imagine taking out a loan and not having a percentage point. No interest. No interest. And the only two left are Iran and North Korea. And then you start to sit there and think, see this whole conflict stuff going on? Oh, we're going to be battling and blah, blah, blah. Yeah, you're battling because you're trying to invade somebody's country to put your bank inside their country. That's what's going on. You're not battling because of actually battling. And that's what's funny, because all the battling is nonsense. You got lasers and all kinds of things that people can do and whatever else. It's all just sitting there playing a game. It's an act, is what it is. And even back with, if you guys remember what happened in Hawaii, when Hawaii got attacked with the DEWs, that whole thing, that's the actual warfare that exists. Not the little, pew, 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 all that stuff and whatever else they're trying to show. So when you get into this is a powerful book. I'll just put it there. And you can just look that one up. And you can order it. You can just go online, and look that up. Someone said Russia doesn't have a Federal Reserve. They got it. Russia has been compromised since the Bolshevik Revolution in the 1910. They've been compromised for a long time. I mean, they were part of the players in World War II to do what was done after the war. The parts that aren't talked about. The Eisenhower death camps and all the stuff that happened after World War II to the people. So Russia has been deep in the pockets. Now, they might show on the television that it's different over there, but they're interconnected. It's all part of communism. That's what it is. It's all part of communism, Marxism, whatever word you want to call it. It's all in the club. They might say, he's doing some things. No. It's the same stuff. Because they were involved. They were heavily involved. And when you get into this, the Rothschilds are the ones who created the Bolshevik Revolution. So then you start to think about all these revolutions in countries, they're funded by bankers. They pay the people to cause a revolution. Russia had the largest gold reserves in the world during 1910. Think about all that money. And then you think about the queen, or whatever her name is, now she's gone, now it's the king. They got the largest gold reserves in the world. Where'd they get them? By causing revolutions, paying revolutions to happen, and then taking their gold. Germany also had a lot of gold too. That gold was gone, taken. It was moved to New York City. And then just so happened, remember the whole 2001 thing? All the money vanished. Wonder where it went. I think it was like something crazy, some crazy amount of money. There's a lot of gold under those towers. See how it all connects the dots? It all connects the dots back to this. So if people aren't aware, then we get taken advantage of. And that's the thing, is you get taken advantage of. And if we don't know the true history of what actually happened with World War I, World War II, the Civil War was on taxes. That was also fighting of central banks and things like that, taxes and getting taxed. If we don't understand these things, then we don't know these things, and then it just keeps happening. And that's why right now what's happening is they're trying to get into like banning social media and things like this, because people are starting to realize the truth is what's happening. Even with TikTok, this whole thing happening with TikTok and this whole situation, and now they want to ban it by 2025. They want to ban it by 2025 because people are waking up. That's what's happening. And the more people who wake up, the more they're starting to see, wait a minute, this doesn't make any sense. You're funding wars, harming people, completely destroying their economy and their country and all the people in it, all to make money. So you follow back and you start to see this and you go, certain names are all involved in this. And it's all bankers. And you think about with economies, you can manipulate the economies with all that. And then give people loans and then trying to say, here's a percentage and you got to pay back a percentage. But as somebody just said, the people are waking up. People are waking up more and more. And it's only going to keep happening. And, when you really think about even with crypto, when it first came out, it was actually competing against the Federal Reserve in one way. A decentralized currency in one way. But it is a part of Agenda 2030. Just so people are aware, it is a part of Agenda 2030. Crypto and all that is right back into this. Because now what happens when you get into Agenda 2030 is they could chip a person and they could just take the money out because it's digital money. So moving us into the currency of crypto and that whole thing is moving us deeper into this. We need to go back. We need to go back to barter, trade. We can go even to gold. Trading is great because there's no tax on that. You know, even people supporting farmers markets, you can even do stuff with cash. You know, you got to go back to before, you know, because the more we're a part of this movement and the deeper we're getting and the debt and the percentages, and think about like even credit cards. Credit cards, you got like what, 20%, 30% interest rates? Tied back to the Federal Reserve. Cars, I think cars are at like what, 10% right now? The mortgages, I think, are like 8.5% or something. It's all tied back to this. And the thing is, if you think back before the Federal Reserve, nobody was in debt. This is why they orchestrated the Great Depression. Because as soon as they took a lot of wealth away from the people, they could put them in debt afterwards. And they could tax them and have a percentage on them. So, you know, people need to be aware of this, do some trading, do some bartering, figure out ways. There's a lot of ways. You don't have to use money. And money just ties back to this, you know. And just, like I said, read more books. And go back into, if people want another one, you can go into the Scientific American. This is a great magazine. You can find more on this. This is a phenomenal one. There's so many great things I've found in Scientific American. And this is before it was all censored and all of the media was owned by two people. You know, anytime you listen to the radio, the newspaper, whatever, it was all two people. You know, they owned all the media. So even with the wars, the media owns it, so then they promote this stuff. But the good news is people are going against it, and that's only going to continue. And here's a funny one. Get an old school little car right there. It's real cool to go look up the videos of how cars, what they used to be able to do. They could like ride up a mountain and do all kinds of crazy things. Now cars can like barely take a turn at like whatever, 30 miles an hour. But these things could just go all over the place. And these old school cars, they used to run on alcohol. That was why the whole prohibition, you had to get rid of that because that competes with Rockefeller oil. Can't tax that if you use a distillery to make your fuel. Or you could do moonshine, or you could do hemp. Hemp could actually create fuel so that you could run these cars around. But there's no tax on that, so that doesn't work. And that doesn't tie back to the Federal Reserve. So they had a prohibition so that they could eliminate the competition. That's the truth. Let me see if there are any more in here. Put your sunshine on the ceiling. Let me see, by Bureau. There was one more in here. Oh, yes. I don't know. This might fall apart, so I've got to be careful with it. But everybody asks, where can you find radium? It's in Colorado. That's where it is. The largest sources of radium are called, I think it's, Carnotite. Carnotite, I think it is. But it's in Colorado. The largest sources of radium and uranium are in Colorado. So when they're having wars about uranium, this is funny because they actually were just talking about this the other day about how there's a battle between America and Russia and they don't have, enough uranium and radium. This is the largest deposit in the world. It's funny because all of these, once again, wars, fighting over materials and sources and lithium and copper and all the other stuff, they got it. It's all here. It's all abundant and it's unlimited, but then they fight over wars and make wars over nonsense. That's pretty much what it is. And as somebody just said, there's no such thing as fossil fuel. It was created by the baddies long ago with propaganda. Yes, it was. Fossil makes it sound like, it's dated, we're going to lose it. But in reality, oil is abiotic. It's the blood of the earth. It's pumping out all the time. All the time. And it's crazy because I had a bunch of buddies who used to work on the rigs, and they used to say they'd go to the rig, there would be oil coming out, they would stop for a day, and then they'd go back, and there was unlimited oil coming out again. But then they just manipulate the prices. And they're like, let's just raise up the gas prices to like $4 a gallon and pretend like we're running out. Just like diesel. The whole diesel thing, running out of that, a whole bunch of nonsense too. First diesel car ran on peanut oil. So you ban the peanuts to get people away from that. But even natural gas, right over here in Arizona, you can drive down one of the highways and you'll see natural gas coming out of the earth on both sides of the highway. Just burning constantly. That's because it's unlimited. People used to go around with dowsing rods, find all this unlimited resources underneath their feet. But if you put people into a scarcity mindset, then they start to believe that they're running out of something. And then they got to pay more. We got to raise those gas prices. We can't get it from over there. We'll just jack them up. See how this game works? It's called manipulation. And that's how you keep an economy floating. You raise the interest rates when you need to increase them, and then you lower them to make one person look better than the other. Kind of like if you remember like 2016 to 2020, it's like the interest rates were like 2%. Now they're like 10%. Do you see? So they lowered them so they can make it look like, oh, this is what it is now. And then they jack them up so they can balance it out. It's a game. And the more you start to see this game, the more you start to realize a lot of things. And also, too, how come this? Why can't we control our own banks and make our own banks? Why can't I make my own bank? Or how come this? Why can't I make my own school? Why is it illegal to make your own bank or your own school? It's an interesting one when you think about it. Wonder if someone's got a stronghold. Rothschilds, JP Morgan, Goldman Sachs. Federal Reserve. Start to connect these dots. Just a crazy one. And I can go on this topic. I'm only 2/3 done with the book. I mean, I'm about 2/3 done with the book, and I'm almost finished with it. But it's just absolutely crazy. And then I was even reading about, like, during World War II in Germany, they were creating their own currency. That's what they basically had a revolution with. That's why their economy went through the roof. Their unemployment went to 1%. They had no homeless people, no beggars, no nothing, because they started to realize that they could create their own currency, have their own powerful bank, and that's a threat. Same with Libya. That's what Libya was doing, giving all organic food to the people, oil to the people, free housing to the people, free water. Libya was creating the largest pipeline in the world to give unlimited water to Africa. That doesn't work in a scarcity economy. And it's crazy because when I was reading up about the 1929 Depression, they said abundance is a burden. Think about that. Abundance is a burden. I wonder why that is. Because you can't manipulate the price if everybody has their own abundance. And what do we always talk about, and what do we get censored for? Talking about abundance. Somebody said, which book they did create their own currency, a true national currency. Yes, they were big on national socialism, is what it was. But they created their own currency. This book goes into, here, I'll give you a screenshot if you want. Just slow it there. But it just starts to talk about how all the wars and all of those things are all orchestrated by central banks. You know, and then you start to see those people who went against the central banks, they took them out. And they said they were a threat. And then they were dangerous. That's what they always say. Don't be like that person. They were dangerous. That's because they own the media too. The bankers own the media. So you just orchestrate the same story and just keep telling people the nonsense. And you keep going through the revolving door, and it just keeps going through unless people are aware. And that's the thing, is the true knowledge makes a change. If you don't have the knowledge, you can't make changes because you can't be aware of what's going on and how people were taken advantage of. I mean, World War II, they had the drafts. They were literally picking birthdays and saying people had to go. Imagine this, like you're like, I don't really want to go. Nah, your birthday was picked. You need to go fight this war for us. And it was interesting because in the Europa Last Battle, they were talking about how the war in World War II could have ended a long time before it actually ended. But they did D-Day. You know, the whole Normandy and D-Day, they did that on purpose. They could have actually, they were saying they could have ended it through Italy and actually ended the whole World War II thing, but they actually did D-Day on purpose. So, you know, when you get into this, you start to see that things are done on purpose, and then there's the whole terror bombing and the Eisenhower camps and that whole thing. It's crazy. It's a crazy one. Person was just spamming the channel. Did you see that? I just got rid of them. I can't. That's the thing. We don't got time. We don't got time for spamming and chaos and all of that. We live in enough of it. Every single day, you turn on social media and there's some crazy thing going on. But we don't got time for it. So you're going. That's pretty much how it works. That's how the live works. Like, we don't need it. We don't need it. And other people are trying to comment and I can't see it because they just keep spamming and spamming and spamming and spamming. So you're going. Toodaloo. Best wishes. Somebody said they did a birthday lottery for Vietnam too. Yes, that was another one. And remember, they couldn't win against the Vietnamese. So when you get into it, they were trying to attack the Vietnamese and that whole thing, but Vietnamese were whooping the Americans, just like Japan. Japan was whooping America too, just like Germany was whooping America too. But you start to get into this, and then that's why they started messing with the weather. That was the whole thing with with Vietnam and everything else. They started orchestrating weather events and that whole thing. So that's the kind of the start of it. And they would then use that as an act of war. Now they're using it in all over the place, in the countries and different places, and trying to tell us that they're saving us. They're saving us from climate change. Newsom actually admitted this the other day. It was funny. He admitted that the people are leaving and they're in a deficit because of climate change and atmospheric rivers. That's what Newsom said. It's not what's going on over there or anything else. It's because of atmospheric rivers, he said. He said atmospheric rivers and climate change are actually causing the problems. So you sit there and think, really? That's what's doing it? Yeah, that's what's doing it. It's definitely that. Delusional is what they are. And that's the thing. The politician people are all delusional because they live in a bubble. They don't seem to see anything of reality. I don't even think they go outside sometimes. Sometimes I think they're almost like just MK Ultra puppets that kind of just like sit in their house and then somehow go at like maybe the building that they're supposed to go to and then they go back. Because they don't seem to make any sense. They don't think logically about anything. I mean, the one lady in New York was talking about how people haven't seen computers or something. Just crazy stuff that you're like, what? What are you talking about? People don't know what computers are. Just goofy things. So, you sit there and go, you're all controlled, you're all puppets. And that's why they get about 2 seconds of time and we keep moving. We have to research, learn, and elevate our knowledge on the information. That's for sure. Somebody said red, blue, orange, they're all the same wings of the same birds. Yeah, because, you look at it, you got red and you got blue, or you got right and you got left. So what are your choices really? Is there really another choice? Now, there's sometimes a third choice, but that third choice is also part of it. That's why people need to understand the truth about what's really going on. She said black people don't know how to operate computers. That's basically what she said. She was a New York politician that said that black people don't know how to operate computers. I mean, this is how disconnected these politicians are to everything. Computers have been around since like the 1960s or whatever it is. And if you want to go back, probably 1940s. So, they say things and you're just sitting there going, what? Kind of like when they were telling everybody they needed to take a shot and they would get like a free Krispy Kreme. And the one guy was eating French fries and he's like, I love French fries and I take all of these so I can be safe. And you're sitting there going, wait, what? What are you talking about? You're promoting obesity and a unhealthy lifestyle. And you're telling me if you take one of these in your arms, you'll be safe and you'll be healthy? How does injecting heavy metals into your body make you healthy after you just ate McDonald's? Doesn't make any sense. And that's why I can't really listen to any of them. Somebody was at de Blasio, yeah, that's what it was. It was a guy in New York. Was it New York? One of them. That whole 2020 time was just a bunch of nonsense. That was them just making up stuff about how we'll be safe, And it's crazy too because with 2020, the book The Invisible Rainbow is a great one on this, but what people were actually suffering from in 2020 was radio wave sickness. Loss of smell, loss of taste, hair loss, dizziness, nausea. Those are all symptoms of radio wave sickness. Now, most people don't know about radio wave sickness because it was taken off the diagnosis from the medical system in the 1920s. After the Kansas flu of 1919 with the rollout of the radio, they actually took radio wave sickness off because they can't sell people radios. How do you think cell phones work? How do you think computers work? How do you think some TVs work? They all work on radio waves. So they had to take radio wave sickness off of The ability to say, oh, that's what you're suffering from. Call it the flu, call it autoimmune, call it chronic fatigue syndrome, call it something else. Because then people would catch on that when the radios were rolling out and all these cell phone towers and all these things, people would start connecting the dots. And back in 2020, we had the largest rollout of a new technology all throughout the country. Every spot that they would roll out this new technology, all of a sudden people start losing their smell, their taste, their senses, and then they got a phone that's got that new technology, and guess what? It's right here, so what's it's cooking? The nose, the sense of smell, the taste, and then you call it an illness when it's just the same exact playbook as 1919 Kansas flu. You tell people they got the flu, and it's jumping all over, but the technology is jumping all over. That's what it is. No germs, no viruses, and all the other stuff that they're making up. That's all it is. It's just a game. And if you don't know, then you sit there and think, that person coughed on me. That's what got me. No, you got yourself. You didn't take care of yourself. You didn't take care of your terrain. You didn't take care of your health. You didn't go out in the sun. You didn't eat healthy. You ate some GMOs. You're not active. The list goes on and on. You got Wi-Fi in your house. Those are causing all of the health ailments that you're suffering from. And then the fear too. You're like, the germs, the boogeyman. Once you remove that fear, everything changes. You start to realize that if a person coughs on you or anything else, it's not going to do anything. And this was all proven back with the 1919 and 1923 Lancaster study, where they realized that germs don't do anything. And this was done in a military setting, a quarantine setting, where people coughed and spit and put all their fluids all over each other. Nobody got sick. And this was a military experiment. The largest quarantine military experiment, and they determined that illness is not caused by people coughing and spitting and doing all that all over each other. The boogeyman of germs is not doing anything. What you do to your body and your terrain and your house and your apartment and wherever you live in and whatever you ingest in your body and drink and whatever else determines your terrain and your health. That's it. That's it. Somebody said, my dog and I went out for 7 hours a day during 2020. My dog lost so much weight. Your dog's probably happy. I mean, I can imagine walking for 7 hours. That was great. That's back when they used to send people text messages and they're like, you got to stay indoors. We care about you. Even though we're taxing you and taking 30% of your income or whatever it may be, 20%, 10%, whatever, we care about you now. You need to stay inside. You need to not go outside. And then we're going to put these plastic barriers all over the place, which are just going to end up in the ocean. But don't worry, it's for your protection. And if you just wear like 50 of these covers, you'll be safe. You'll be perfectly safe. You could cover your eyes and your ears. You put them in your nose. You're good. You're good. Just listen to us. Even though the plastic is going to end up in the ocean, don't worry about that. We got to talk about climate change. That's what we got. We got to talk about what we're not talking about. And somehow how 2020 relates to that. It's just a game. That's what it is. Somebody said, where can I find that book? You can find it on eBay. You can find it on archive.org. You could find it on A-Books. You could find it on Good Books. There's a whole bunch of websites. Just look for used books. Used books. Someone said, keep your vibration high and you won't get sick. That's what it is. It's a frequency. If you put people into fear, they start believing that they're actually ill. It's a frequency. They're looking at that person going, they're coughing. Don't come by me. Well, if they actually could get you, they would have got you already. They would have got you when you popped out the womb. But it's a frequency. And if you see people, it's kind of like when people yawn and then all of a sudden people start yawning. It's a frequency. So fear can be used as that same frequency, that germs are going to get you. But we're all still here. Somehow all the people in this chat did not comply or do any of the things that were supposed to be done in 2020. And we're all still here. Almost seems like the whole 2020 thing was a myth then. Because we're all alive. We didn't take any of these and we didn't cover our faces and we didn't stand on stickers in the grocery store. We're all still here. Look at that. Look at that. We've lived. Interesting. Still here. Yeah, we're all still here. I'm still here. Let me see. Somebody's... You are what you think, change what you think, and watch your life and change for the better. That's exactly what it is. Crystal Tini talks about that all the time. You manifest, you create a high vibration, that's what you got. If you create chaos and you live in chaos and you stick yourself in chaos and you surround your people or surround yourself with chaotic people and chaotic social media, you become chaotic and you become ill. That's what it is. If you follow people who are trying to raise your vibration, it's a very different story. And people don't realize that you create everything because the ether around us is always changing to what we are creating. And we don't realize that our thought creates. That's a whole woo-woo thing. That's woo-woo, you better stay away from that. It's new age, whatever. That's part of how everything functions. Just like kind of when you got a weather app and you're looking at the weather app and you're like, oh, it's going to be cloudy. You just created it to be cloudy that day because a million people looking at that app creating the skies. But woo-woo. Let me see what we got. Very true. Oh, yes, the winter of death for those people who didn't take those. Remember that? All the people who didn't take those in 2020? The winter of death. That's what they called it. And remember they were blaming people? Was it Chris Cuomo and all those other people? They were blaming people saying, if you don't take these, you're not going to live. Still here. Look at that. Still here. Didn't wear any face coverings? Still here. That's because your whole germ theory ploy is all from back in the 1919 Kansas flu ploy, where you did the same exact thing and you tried to make people believe and they resisted, so you put them in jail. You put them in mental asylums, actually. Remember that whole thing? Anybody who competed against the system and said, I don't really believe that. Rockefellers came in there, flexing a report. You better believe in germs. You better not believe that what you eat, drink, and put into your body could harm you. Or the Wi-Fi in your home. Better not believe that. That's actually what does it. Somebody says, Matt, my electroculture... I ate that one. Matt, my electroculture... It's horrible. Matt, my electroculture on my garden has exploded my plants from last year. That's amazing. And I was just showing all the bees by me. And all the flowers, and I have a cat's claw tree, which now has flowers just going crazy. But electroculture is magical. And you're tapping into the unlimited earth energy that is below us. And Nathan B. Stubblefield actually realized this. He put earth batteries into the earth, and he noticed that they would get stronger over time. And he said, why are we using this Rockefeller energy system when we could be using the earth energy all the time? That's because we're taught that we got to use this whole system. But Nathan B. Stubblefield realized that you could create earth batteries. He also created the earth telephone. This is really interesting. He actually took a piece of copper, stuck it into the earth, and this is how people would communicate in certain areas in which it was too expensive to have a telephone. You could communicate through the earth, and it was safer. You didn't have to use radio frequencies like all the microwave stuff that comes off these devices. You could use the earth. And he created all these different things, but electroculture is tapping into that. It's earth energy, atmospheric energy, the ether, static fields, all the stuff we should stay away from because it leads to abundance. That's what it is. And electroculture is wild when you get into it. And what you want to do is when you get your electroculture antennas, you want to grid your land. So wherever you're living, you want to create a grid around that land. And the reason you want to do that is because the Rockefellers have been taking power lines and putting them all around your place that you live in. And what you're going to do is you're going to make electroculture antennas, put it all around your land so you can grid that land with the Earth's energy. It counters this Rockefeller electricity system, which actually diminishes plant growth and diminishes your health. So you're countering it with Earth energy that is being released with static energy all the time. And it's pinging, and then it starts to harness that area. Plants start growing faster, you get more bees, you got more birds, you got it all. I mean, I can attest to it. I'm out there filming the birds and the bees and the chipmunks, everything. They pick up on this energy. And this is all part of the old world. You know, we've talked about this in the past. Old world buildings and everything before 1910, 1920s. It's all the old world. They had antennas all over the place. Every single building had antennas. They're picking up on atmospheric energy. You look at churches and temples and mosques and all other things. They got antennas up on top. It's picking up on the atmospheric energy. It's all around us. The ether was removed off the periodic table 1910. So that's why nobody talks about it. It's all woo-woo because it was debunked by Einstein. And it's interesting because Einstein was a USPS worker. He worked for the United States Postal Service and somehow came up with this beautiful equation, but he was just a USPS worker. See how it's all connected? Government workers creating things and then all of a sudden saying, oh, the ether is wrong. Don't look into that ether. It's all woo-woo. Pseudoscience. Rockefeller terms. Rockefeller General Education Board terms. It's all connected. Copper weather vanes. Yes, I've done a great talk on that. Kenneth Lynch, 1972, Copper Weather Vanes. Great book to look into. All the weather vanes that used to be up on top of the buildings, lightning rods, that whole thing, they were all connected into the unlimited energy, connected into the ether. So when you start to get into that, you start to see why they were removed off of all the houses and the buildings. Because when they do this weather nonsense that you see up in the sky, you know, all the straight lines and everything, they're using static fields or static field cloud generators. And if you have a bunch of antennas on the ground, it counters the static that's up above. So if you wanted to manipulate the weather, you have to get rid of the electroculture or the lightning rod weather vane antennas on top of the building so that you can manipulate the weather. Everything that happens on the ground affects up above. So when you start putting antennas, you start noticing that you start countering what's above. And you'll punch holes in that nonsense. And here's somebody talking about cloudbusters. You can do stuff with that. Yeah, Wilhelm Reich's work. Cloudbusters, you can put those all over your land, amplify your energy. Copper pipes. You know, Trevor James Constable used copper pipes and all different types of pipes placed all over. You do so much. Grid your land. Improve your land. Amplify the energy. Organic Fit Mom says, Dear Matt, which of your products would you highly recommend for a 30 plus age lady who has been vegan for most of her life, B plus blood type? You know it all, actually. Blood type's a fun one. If you're going to start, I would say maybe doing some dragon's blood and then some shilajit. That pretty much kind of covers you all. You can throw a little 6 mix in there. Those will pretty much cover a little bit of everything, but what you're trying to do is just bring those nutrients back. And a lot of times the body's just missing nutrients and you start bringing those back. But 6 mix, dragon's blood and shilajit, great combination. You have the 6 magical healing mushrooms in there. You have shilajit, which helps detox and bring the minerals back. And then you have dragon's blood to clean out the blood, which is a big one because people's blood is thick and dense and holding way too much stuff. Helps cleanse everything out. So those 3, I would say, would be your top recommendation. Blood type is a fascinating one, and we've went into this whole thing, A, B, and O. And then you get into positives and negatives. RH positive and RH negative. It's a deep rabbit hole. It's a fascinating one. It's interesting to look up the creator of the blood type too and that whole thing. But it's fascinating how certain blood types can actually disrupt electrical devices. So sometimes people will be driving down the street and all of a sudden their blood type will actually turn off the light that's above them, like a street light. And that's because the blood is very highly conductive. Certain blood types are more conductive than others, but it's a fascinating topic when you get into it. This is also why certain people have 6 senses, that whole thing. Certain blood types have more 6th sense than kind of others. It's a fascinating one when you get into it. Matt, did you already talk about the Northern Lights? The Northern Lights are artificial. That's pretty much what it came down to. That whole thing that happened the other day where people were seeing the artificial Northern Lights, that's just science. That's scientists and HAARP and the weather modification programs which have been taking place since about the 1910 or 1920s. They're just messing with things, Next will be Project Bluebeam and aliens and some sort of like alien tax, and we need to band together against the aliens. They're just kind of queuing you up for that. So that whole aurora and everything, if they can fake the Northern Lights, they can fake an alien invasion. So just so you know, if an alien invasion occurs and there's a Google event or a sensitive event that Google has been talking about, you'll kind of understand why. Because they're kind of practicing and playing with things. And the thing is when you're beaming radio waves, which cause health ailments, you can imagine what it's doing to the whole grid. Like people could go out there and go, oh, I'm seeing the Northern Lights. You're seeing something that's fake. And then who knows what's really happening with that. And that's the thing. These scientists who think that they're saving us, because it's always about the climate, that's what they tell us, they're just messing with Mother Nature. They think they're above Mother Nature. They think they're above how nature works. And they're just messing with everything, just screwing it all up. That's pretty much what it's doing. It's just screwing everything up. And they're just like, oh, we don't know what's wrong. We can't figure out the flooding. And in Texas and then New Orleans and Florida and whatever else? Well, because you're messing with the weather. You're messing with the weather on one side of the United States, which will then mess with the weather on the other side. It's common sense. What you do on one side will affect another. That's how it always goes. If you make it dry over here, it's going to be wet over here. It's the opposite. Positives and negatives. It's common sense, but they don't have common sense because they're manipulating. They're living in a lab and they don't look outside. They're not even connected to nature. I mean, they don't even go in nature. Victor Schauberger used to talk about just go into nature and you'd understand nature. And I spend as much time as I can in nature because you just watch it and it's so beautiful. All the things that are happening. But if you sit in the lab and you're like, oh, if I just do this calculation of increasing clouds in this area, will save us. What are you talking about? You have no idea how the real world works or nature. It's crazy. It's crazy. Same with the tornadoes coming out of anywhere. Yes, this is a big one too. Been a lot of tornadoes in the Midwest, and I think there was like a EF5 or whatever. They're cranking that stuff up. And they're also cranking up stuff below the earth. Because tornadoes, you don't only see the top of a tornado, there's energy below in the earth. There's a spiral taking place on the top and the bottom at the same time. This is a lot of time why earthquakes happen. There's all this static buildup that's charged in the earth and then it cracks apart because it has to release. So a tornado, when you really think about it, is the spiral of both the top and the bottom below deep into the earth. There's a lot of things going on. And they're manipulating a lot of these things and just it results in tornadoes and all kinds of things. It'd be interesting to look into if the Wilhelm Reich cloudbuster could counter that stuff. Because maybe it also could be a lot of static buildup. And if you released or discharged that static, maybe tornadoes don't work that way. So I would tell people to check that out and try that out. Crazy flooding in Dubai from our government weather modification. Yeah, Dubai's just off the charts. They just think, if they turn a desert into a forest, they're saving the desert, which makes no sense because it's the desert for the reason. You go there because it's hot, it's dry, it feels good. It's like Arizona. It's hot, it's dry, it feels good, you get good energy. That's why you go. So why would you want to turn it into a forest? It doesn't make any sense. But in Dubai, they believe they're above nature and they can just manipulate and do whatever. And then they flooded their town. There was crazy floods. Now there's floods happening in Brazil too. Same thing. You mess with the weather, Mother Nature's going to give it to you. That's for sure. But then they say they're saving us. It's the climate. It's the polar ice caps that are melting and the polar bears. It's probably the polar bears. They forgot that they haven't shown us the polar bears in a while or the ice caps melting. We haven't seen that one in a while. Remember that? We were going to be flooded. We're still here. There was a hole in the atmosphere. We're still here. It's all crazy. Can we wrap telephone poles with copper wire to turn them into a gigantic electroculture antenna? It's possible, totally possible. I mean, I know that when you go over 15 feet, you're actually hitting a point where you can light up light bulbs for free. So I think it's definitely possible. I mean, there's so many experiments which could be done with electroculture. You just need a lot of people. That's the thing. You need lots of people testing all different types of things and trying different things and seeing what happens. But you could even be putting different stones or crystals at the top, and then you could be harnessing energy. If you took quartz and you compress them at the top, it creates piezoelectric or piezoelectricity. So, the higher you go up, more energy that's there. We're kind of low when you really think about it. Now what would be interesting is a person trying electroculture in the mountains versus trying, for example, where I'm at, it's 1,400 feet. But up in the mountains at 8,000 feet, it'd be interesting to see what that does too. Because there might be more voltage at, let's say, 8,000 feet than 1,400. I'm real low, 1,400 is pretty low. So, when you think about that, higher you go up, more voltage. Great live, Matt. Thanks, everybody. Rose, it's been great. Just so you guys all know, this one will go up on Rumble. It'll go up on YouTube. And it'll also go up on Telegram. If you guys haven't came to Telegram, please do. Our page was deleted for 5 days. I couldn't access it. I couldn't get on here. My telephone was banned. My computer was banned. Had to use a new telephone. This platform, the longevity of Instagram or TikTok is very slim. That's all I'm going to tell you guys. Because with the amount of censorship and the restricted comments and all the things that are happening to people, I could tell you that Instagram and TikTok do not have a great longevity. So come to Telegram. It has absolutely been popping. Elevate Thy Mind, or Cultivate Elevate. We have a group. It hit like 65,000 people. I put a ton of stuff in there. And it's just an easy way so people can communicate, make friends, and also just chat and not get censored, because it's pretty much what's going on. But come to Telegram, come to YouTube, come to Rumble, and I will put this up there. But I thank you all. I will put up the video, or I will put up the book one more time so you guys can get a screenshot. But this whole live was just pretty much on the Federal Reserve, the banking system, and electroculture, which are all counters towards that. And it's important to talk about these topics and be knowledgeable. So if you guys want to take a little, maybe like that so you guys can get the author, and then I don't know if the comments are in the way. But it's been a blast. If you guys have any questions about any of the products or anything, send me a message. I'm glad to help. And I wish you guys all a great moon day. I will see you next moon day, which will be even higher energy because it's almost the full moon. We're just going up. See you next time.